My name is Naomi Moir, and I work in professional development for Oxford University Press. I've been working in English language teaching for around 20 years now, but I'm also a mum of a primary age child, and I, like you, am having to think differently and creatively about how to keep my child learning and also entertained. And that's making use of the resources that I'm being sent from school and resources that I have access to online. In this short video, I am going to provide a few tips and techniques for working with content in an online format, and this is working on the assumption that you don't have a physical copy of your child's English book at home and that you don't have access to a printer, but that you do have access to their course book in an online format. So, for example, a flip book. This means the content is only available on screen. Working with content in an online format with pre-primary and younger primary age children creates some particular problems. A lot of the content involves tasks like listen and circle, or match the words in the pictures, or even cutting and sticking. And that's tricky when you're working with content on a screen. So also, young children are struggling with understanding page layout and the mechanics of reading and writing, and then they are dealing with the language on top of that. So there is a lot going on. They're also easily distracted by pictures, bright colours, what's on the next page, etc. So in this video, I will highlight a couple of features of the OUP flipbooks that will allow you to access and display the content in the easiest and best possible way. And then I will look at a few ways of working around the tasks that would normally require the children to write in their books. It is worth noting, however, that there will be some tasks and activities that just aren't possible. So you might be able to think of an alternative yourself, or if you're good at drawing, you probably can, but you might just need to leave or skip it. So let's start by exploring functionality. There is a menu box in the bottom left corner, and this allows you to do two key things. Let's start with the contents. Clicking on this will bring up the pages of the flipbook, all the pages in the flipbook. You can then simply click on a double page spread and you will automatically be taken to those pages. This allows you to jump to specific pages that you want without having to flick through each page, which can be distracting for your children. It's also a good idea to have worked out the page numbers you want in advance so that you can jump to them quickly and easily. Note that you will need to work with the page number in the flipbook itself rather than in the content. For example, as we can see here, page 5 of the activity book is page 33 of the flipbook. Now let's look at single page view. Clicking on this shows just one page from the book at a time. This reduces the amount of distraction and allows you to focus in on what you want them to be working on and looking at. Once in single page view, you can use your browser, and in this example I have Chrome, to really focus in and go into full screen mode and then really focus in and zoom out. So clicking here brings up this menu and then allows me to go into full screen mode or zoom in and out. So here's an example of the page at 50% and then zoomed into 90% on a particular activity. Right, so now moving from functionality, let's look at best practice and tips. First and foremost, very simple, have loads of pen, paper and pencils to hand. You can do most of the activities simply using a pen or a pencil and paper. Let's look at a couple of example exercises and how you might work with them using just pen and paper. Here are two examples. There is a listen and match activity and a word search. Both could be done simply by pointing to or touching the screen, but pen and paper could also be used and would bring in a bit more variety and a change of focus. Let's look at the first activity. If possible, try to mimic or copy the layout on the screen as much as possible. For example, the content in the book expects the children to work horizontally. And here you can see I've provided two examples. The first asks the children to work vertically, which is different to the layout in the book. The second example is horizontal, like the layout in the book. So the second example more closely matches the course book. Matching the course book as much as possible reduces the workload for the children. There's less for them to think about, less for them to process, and it allows them to focus in on the language and simply completing the task. Here is an example where if you're good at drawing, you can put your skills to good use and you can mimic that page even more. I'm not good at drawing, so I've just written numbers and names. This next example, you could just get them to look at the screen and write the answers on a page. But if you have time, you can create the word search grid itself. Note that I have written the letters in lowercase, as this is how they appear in the book. Again, this is just one less difference for your child to process. Here's another activity where they're supposed to write the words in the correct order to make sentences. You could just get them to look at the screen and choose the first word in the sentence, write it down, and then find the second word. However, children are generally very tactile and physical, so if you have time, you could create cut-ups. This means writing each word on a separate piece of paper or card, and then get them to move the words into the correct order to make the sentences before copying them into a notebook or onto a piece of paper. They can then be used again and again and are great for revision. If your child likes a bit of competition, a fun idea is to time your child and see if they can do it faster each time. I've been doing this with my son for his spelling. We work with just 4 to 5 words at a time. I put the letters out on the table. I say a word at a time and ask him to make the word. Once we've done all the words in that set, I scramble the letters together again and set the timer on my phone. I then say the words again, one by one, and he finds the right letters to make each one as quickly as he can. We do this a couple of times to see if he can do it faster. Now, in lots of primary and pre-primary courses, the teacher would use the visuals in the book or flashcards, picture cards, and would get the students to point to different objects or actions. You can do all of these, but you'll just have to accept sticky fingers on your screen. However, you can also use the objects and items you have in your house and you and your child. For example, you could ask your child to touch their own nose, or to touch something blue, or find a pen, or bring you something round or heavy or green, etc. Now, a big part of teaching and learning is the opportunity to communicate and to practice using the language being taught. Obviously, learning at home means there are no classmates to communicate with. So the first option is therefore you. However, this might feel daunting or intimidating, and they might feel uncomfortable about speaking to you in English, and you also might feel uncomfortable about speaking to them in English. Or it could just be a little bit dull and boring, always talking to the same person, especially if they know what your answers would be. So an alternative is that you could use a puppet or a soft toy. This way, the answers and interaction can be more varied and even silly, which usually goes down quite well with young ones. You could even develop a persona or character for this toy, working with your child to decide their name, where they're from, what they like and dislike. And as you work your way through the course, you can then choose and add more details to their character, depending on the topic of the unit. For example, what sports and hobbies do they do? What food do they like? Who is in their family? and so on. I hope this has given you some ideas for how you can make a flipbook work in these unusual circumstances. The most important thing to remember is you don't have to do every last activity, and that simple pen and paper will actually take you a long way, as long as you balance that out with physical movement and a bit of fun and laughter. If you're looking for more ideas and resources, you can visit our Oxford Parents page. The URL is on the screen now. Thank you and good luck.